A neighborhood could consist of anywhere between 4 to maybe 10 blocks. You might have a top of the hill and the bottom of the hill that don't get along with each other, but they've been raised together like they grew up with each other with the sandbox. Your best friend from the sandbox is the number one killer that's going to come and do you just because you make it more than they is.
Welcome back
Oh,
to the
yeah.
Broken Home Podcast. Hope you're all having a great day. I want to introduce you all to Trey. How you doing tonight, bro?
Doing all right, man. Thank you for having me, man.
Shout out Dusty Vision TV. He recommended you.
Salute,
So that
man.
you-
Salute. Shout out to
Absolutely.
Dusty Vision TV, man. And y'all hit the like, share, and subscribe button. Subscribe to
Right
both Dusty
now.
Vision and Broken Home Podcast right now. Both of those podcasts.
Salute to that. Thank
Salute,
you.
man.
We like to always take this right back to the beginning. Where are you originally from?
Originally, I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm from 33rd and Northeast. Benner Road, Ward 7. You know what I'm saying?
And
Then
you've lived there your whole life?
most of majority of my life, yes. And then that's when I moved, you know what I'm saying, all around different parts of the city. I've lived on 23rd Street Northeast, and I've also lived on 42nd Northeast. So I've pretty much been a Northeast baby my whole life.
What's DC like? I've heard it's pretty rough there in some spots.
DC is a southern-based city that's, where our president lays his head at and where the laws are passed and everything. But just because we have all these political figures in the background, like with Congress and all that stuff, we still have like 4 blocks down, you still got a neighborhood. Still hoods, it's still drugs, it's still crime, it's still pimping going on. You would think that the nation's capital would be a little bit more tighter together, but it's not, man. It's a giant free for all, pretty much.
Are you an only child? Did you come from a large family?
Last of 7,
Oh, wow.
but I grew up with my mom and my sister. We got 2 separate dads. I got about 5 other, siblings from him. So me and my sister grew up together, but my sister moved out when she started seeing him get on them drugs. So for me, it was like, I ain't gonna lie to you, man. As take it back from 1989 to 1995, it was like hell on earth, man. When we were living on 42nd and Benton Road, Northeast, we were in a drug infested neighborhood where heroin, that was really big during the 80s. So when it transitioned over from Reaganomics, right when Bill Clinton launched the war on drugs, that was the era where everybody was breaking into cars and flipping cars for a little bit of pocket change just to get high, not even to just get weapons.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about you can come outside your front doorstep. You go to the corner store right across the street from 6th District Police where it used to be at. You would literally see nothing but fiends on the corner and on the street. Like people walking outside barefoot, strutting. You would see women that are like in their 40s, but they look like they're 90 years old. That's how fucked up the drugs were. And like every night, the cars were getting broken into. That's back. You remember those car alarms protected by Vipers? Stand back.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was that era, man. So you hear like all those weird sounds waking you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And if that wasn't the problem, it was the drug wars, man. Like everybody might be from that neighborhood, but everybody had their own little circle. So one of the few things that a lot of people don't know about DC is a whole neighborhood doesn't have each other's back. So a neighborhood could consist of anywhere between 4 to maybe 10 blocks. And you might have a top of the hill and the bottom of the hill that don't get along with each other, but they've been raised together like they grew up with each other with the sandbox. So your best friend from the sandbox is the number one killer that's going to come and do you. And one day when they get jealous and envious of you, just because you make it more than they is. I think that was a big portion of why the city is divided. And my city is small, man. DC is small. Like it's only 76 point square miles of a radius, bro. Like we got 4 sections. We got Northeast, Northwest, Southwest, Southeast. And to be honest, it's kind of like, you know, it's like how New York has boroughs,
Yep.
Yeah.
but imagine that, but 10 times smaller. You can travel in any direction you go. You can travel 15 minutes, you'll be right there in a different section.
And what was the gang scene like there? You said that your best friend could end up being your op. What is the whole gang culture like there right now?
Well, the majority of it, it has two terms. It has about three different politics that's going on right now. The guys who don't want to join organized gangs like Crips and Bloods or GDs or Latin Kings and stuff like that, those guys typically just stay to their neighborhood and their roots. So, like, I'm just going to throw a street out there. You might be from Minnesota Avenue on 37th Street, but you don't claim Crip nor Blood, but you're from Minnesota Avenue. But the problem is you're still holding on to the old original ways of DC. The new age of DC, you might have five Crips that live on 37th in Minnesota that live in the same building right at the top of the hill, and the Bloods will be on the same 37th and Minnesota Avenue that live at the bottom of the hill. And these guys that don't want to claim Crip nor Blood are locked in the middle of everything, and they're cool with who they're cool with because this might be their cousin or their brother. So they're not going to turn on their family. So for them, gang shit means nothing. But when the gangs that are organized like Crips and Bloods and GDs and Latin Kings invade, and even MS-13, that's when you start seeing crime start shooting because now you have Crips going against the Bloods, you have Bloods going against Crips, you have MS-13 cutting regular people that are regular hood guys, you know what I'm saying? They just push neighborhoods. Then you got MS-13 that's on a turf war. Like whatever they can have, that where they can muscle their way in, they're going to take that. Some of these guys are coming from El Salvador. So, you know, you're familiar with like refugees fleeing their country because it's overpopulated and their government is like, you know, they're at war with it on the street. So for them, they travel 10,000 miles away to get away from that so they can just get a regular job and live life regular. But as you know, gangs travel. So you have 18th Street and MS-13 coming from El Salvador that's also established with the Los Angeles connection. So then you see them pouring over from LA, migrating over here to the DC metropolitan area, including even parts of Maryland and Virginia, known as the DMV. Now, as far as Crippin element and Blood element, Crips have been coming up over here since the Rayford Edmond days. Are you familiar with Rayford Edmonds?
I'm
No,
not.
no, I'm not.
One of the biggest drug dealers in DC. And he was most notably, he was famous for known to like rob the drug dealers and take their drugs and then turn around and sell it. That was a big thing for him. And he had Wayne Silk Perry, who was his hit man. That was his right hand man. You know, I grew up with his nephews. Most of his nephews are Crips,
Mm.
and a lot of them come from Cali. And that was a lot of things that people were like shocked about because West Coast, like many of the West Coast gangbangers, a lot of the gang members have origins and roots and family from the South that originally came from somewhere else. So when they do come to these different cities, they already have a relative or a cousin or a family member that lives over here. So for them, they get a chance to come visit, pull up, and then if they like the scenery, they stay. And if they want to, they will expand the hood. But a lot of the times, like there was a movement called Operation White Seed. Now, Operation White Seed was when Rayford Edmonds had established a relationship with all the Crips from South Central that were involved, located from the west side going all the way to the east side. And this was in the 80s. They actually have a documentary on it called Divided City. So if you look at the prominent drug years of anything between 83, 84, and 85, cocaine was making its way, you know, across state lines and it was flooding the nation's capital. If your drugs are coming from the West Coast, most likely your gangs are going to be West Coast oriented. So now you're seeing that could be anything from a black gang or a Mexican gang. And it's like slowly trickling in. And the reason why it's been under the radar for so long is different people have different MOs. So, like for MS-13, their MO was they want to be the most notorious and the most violent. So, for them, violence was how they got exposed. And then the rapture came when gang injunctions came and enforced them and got most of them off the street. But a lot of their members are still on the street to this day. They even have a whole movie about it.
How old were you, Trey, when you got into learning about gang life and just being aware that it's around you?
13, man.
13, eh? When you have that many siblings, you know, are you all joining and getting in on this gang life or?
I mean, for my siblings, they chose not the gang life. Only one of my brothers, he's involved in the street, but he never joined a gang. He
No.
rather just he repped his neighborhood where he lay his head at, but he never wanted to like push it like it was a set, like how I push. So for me, I'm the first Crip in my immediate family because our family didn't carry that until I started picking it up. But the only reason I picked it up was because the Crips that were coming over from the West Coast, they would come in these big body box cars like the Chevys and all that. And these Chevys were like chrome and decked out with like cereal box characters, comic book characters, and cartoons and stuff like that. They had all the fly rims, the tints on everything, it was flashy, and these guys were like always, in the neighborhood, just being low key because a lot of people thought during the 90s that all the Crips, they all stay in blue and the Bloods all stay in red. But in the 90s on the West Coast is when they started to see the shift in people no longer color banding. So you probably have been in the city for almost 30 or 40 plus years and you think that you've never seen a Crip or a Blood, but you've been dapping somebody up this whole entire time and never realized what they were because they never showed you that side. Because everybody's not going to be flamboyant. Everybody's not going to have a bunch of tattoos. Everybody's not going to always wear a bandana around them or wearing a pendulum or a button up. Wearing a white tee or a black tee, how would you know? Walk past you every day. And it's the
Yeah.
same thing with it's the same thing with MS-13. Like just because they're El Salvadorian, that doesn't mean they're automatically MS-13, but a lot of negative stereotypes and stigmas stick with people. Even people
Yeah.
that are totally, completely innocent.
What made you decide? Actually, before we even get into that, what was your family dynamics like between you, your mom, and your dad? What was the home life like?
Oh, I hated it, man. I
Oh, you
hated it.
did? Yeah. Okay.
Oh
Why?
yeah. It was
What happened
it
there?
was it was like I was about 3 or 4 years old. This is the early portion of the 90s. The dynamic in my household was like Godzilla versus King Kong every morning. It was like my mom was always defending herself against my dad, and my dad was abusive. It was the heroin. The drugs made him go crazy. And he started punching everything. Started punching holes in the wall. He started beating up on my mom. He put 14 fillings in my mom's mouth to this day. And then one day for Christmas of 1995, I was five turning six. I had a gift of steel toe boots that I put on, and I seen my dad cock his hand back like he was about to slap my mom in public. And I just charged at him with all my might, and I just started kicking the shit out of him until he started stumbling and falling on the ground. And I'm just a little boy at that point. So had I been a grown man fighting my dad, or my dad probably be dead. Well, my father is dead, but he died of drug over the long years of drug abuse. God rest his soul. But it was like dealing with that, and then I'm living in an apartment. I'm surrounded by hundreds of people living in a building, and people got roaches. People got field mice. It's annoying, man. People running up, like making all noise, like you can't sleep at night. Cars are going off, and they're shooting in the background. Like I wouldn't want to go back to that neighborhood. I wouldn't recommend it for anybody.
You had a pretty rough upbringing then with the relationship between you and your parents. Like when you think back, was it always like that? Was there ever any good times between the three of you?
I'm gonna be honest. The best times is when my father wasn't on drugs. Like we're talking like when someone is on heroin, they're sitting in the house naked. I don't mean to scar you with that image, but imagine you're just a little kid running around in your diaper and you see a grown ass man sitting on the couch naked and he's cursing at the TV, throwing beer cans at it. And your mom is wearing a nightgown and a robe with slippers on, trying to tell him, calm down. And then that becomes an issue, right? But then the days where he's not on drugs, a mom is in her work uniform. She used to drive the bus for Metro. And, she was the breadwinner. My mom has always been the number one hustler and the number one breadwinner in the household. So most of the good times when my father wasn't around, me and my mom was always like this, locked in, like real tight. And anything that I wanted, I never wanted for anything. My mom is the best mom on the planet. So when my father wasn't on drugs, when he tried to go to the rehabilitation, I slowly started seeing the good sides of it, you know. And of course, he went to the Salvation Army and stuff like that and self help programs. But eventually, it got to the point where he just can't live there no more, man. And some of the worst days of my life was, I don't know if you remember in the 90s, they had this thing like it was like a big play school, like football, where you put all your toys in the bin. It's like really huge, like you can fit a child in there. I would take all my toys out when they get to fighting or getting to arguing. I would just go take my toys out of that thing, man, and just go retreat in that football and put the lid over top of it. And I would just sit in darkness for hours because I didn't want to hear, any of the negative around. And my mom saying that it was affecting me. So eventually she asked my father to leave. And, when you're 3 or 4 years old, you waking up out of your sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning and you're seeing your dad being carried out by the cops in handcuffs, domestic violence all the time.
Yeah,
So it's like I'm not trying to paint him out to just be the ultimate bad guy, but because of that, it kind of like made me look at the guys outside that were cripping. Those guys, because I didn't have a real tight relationship with the rest of my siblings, it's like your sister left because of your dad. She left the house at 12 to go stay at my aunt's house. Then you got the rest of my brothers and sisters. They're off living life as if, they're, only children. But what they don't know is the guys that are in the neighborhood with the flashy cars, the curvy looking voluptuous women with the ass hugging biker shorts that look like they got painted on. We got the music bumping, the weed looking like a mushroom cloud on the whole street. These guys draped in all blue with jewelry on, they're the ones giving you toys and, a lot of drug dealers, man, especially Crips, looked out for Christmas, man. Christmas and birthdays. Like, I ain't gonna lie to you. But when I start looking at them, I'm like, they became my Superman, if that makes sense.
yep,
So it's like, just like, like when you see guys join, like looking up to the mafia, how they look at the mob, that's how I look at the Crips. These guys handle their business when it's time to. My childhood brain could see, I saw the camaraderie. They had a brotherhood. And the only thing that I could identify with the brotherhood at the time was Ninja Turtles, brother. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Yeah, man.
That was so like when I was a big Turtles fan. Matter of fact, this right here takes me back, man. I still collect them to
Oh,
this day, bro.
nice.
This kept me sane in the 90s, bro.
Unopened.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah,
Nice.
man. Like outside of the gang stuff, like stuff that really I hold on to, like bro, like that. Like when I seen the brothers and how they look out for each other on TV, it's like I want to have that same rapport with my brothers. But when your biological brothers are not there for the early key steps, you latch on to who's going to show you that acceptance, that camaraderie, that love. That's what you fight for, you know. So it made sense for me.
Yeah, and it seems all the more appealing when you see a brotherhood like that, coming from what you're seeing every day at home. Like it's an easy decision just to walk on over there and just stay with them people.
Yeah,
yeah. That's why so many of us turn to the streets when we don't have that positive role model at home, or even when you don't feel safe at home with the people that you feel that make you feel safe at that time.
oh yeah. Like, what I'm saying? Like, and the thing I liked about the gang the most, Crips didn't really care what color you were. You know what I'm saying? If you down for the cause, they accepted you. So one of the first things we learned was there's no white, there's no black, there's no Asian, there's no Hispanic, you know, it's that C. You down for that? Got your back for life. We love you, embrace. It was never about something that was racially motivated. It was always, hey, look, we're trained to look at people as people. And when you look at that C, we've representing for that community. So everybody is within your community. So you're gonna slide for the community. That's what was pitched to me. Now, when you look at, you know what I'm saying, the turtles, they're different shades of green, but that doesn't make them lesser brothers.
That's a good
So
analogy,
same
man.
similar, yeah, same concept, you know. And what I liked about the Crips growing up was they stayed like everybody loves how the TV makes us all to be like this super big ass army. The Crips that I saw growing up, they stayed with like a very tight niche circle. So like if the gang was only 10 people, then that's what it was. It was 10. Nowadays, the gang is like 40, 50, maybe to a 500 members or even the thousands. But that's from generations of, you know, that throughout the history of this country. You can kind of imagine like it's impossible for you to say that you love so many people when you don't. It's only a select few in your life that really know your first and last name, and they introduce to your family. They know where you lay your head at, stuff like that. You know, you can't share that with everybody. You got to
Yeah.
protect something that's sacred.
Do you feel like your relationship with your father, not having that positive male role model in the home, do you think that's what helped push you into those streets then?
Yeah, when you look at your dad, he's supposed to be the strongest man in your life. You know, it's God first, and there's your father, and then there's you. You know what I'm saying? So when you see that God is taking care of everything, God is good. But when you're seeing that your dad is being abused, you know what I'm saying, like with the substance abuse, you start seeing the devil in him. And then you start looking at him weak and you don't respect him no more. You know what I'm saying? Like that aspect of him being the strong male role model that is supposed to be the leader, the provider, and the protector, it has been raptured off of you. You'll never be able to look at him again the same. And when you see guys on the street that represent these principles, you start correlating that to like, damn, Crips never gave an excuse not to be a dad. They were like my dad almost. Well, not my biological dad, but like it showed you how to
Yeah.
ride a bike. You know what I'm saying? They giving you Christmas. Come on, man. You're getting toys for Christmas from Crips hustling. Come on, man. Who wouldn't fight for that? They coming out, you know, with the ice cream truck, walking up to it and buying all the food in the neighborhood for all the kids to have. So if like I don't know what like it's not just the kind gestures, but they're coming up to you, they showing you how to tie a tie, wear a suit. Like, you know, the only other person I can say that was like a father figure to me was my uncle. He got tired of seeing my dad beat on my mom. And, you know, one day my uncle showed up and he beat the hell out of my father. And I can't say too much, but my uncle is the reason my father has no appendix.
Oh, wow.
We could use our imagination on that one then.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy, the stuff that Crips are doing in the neighborhood. It's almost like this community outreach, but at the same, on the other hand, it's almost like slightly recruitment kind of. I don't know, like for some of those young kids, are they making it a point to go out there to be like, hey, if you ever, you know, you need someone, we're always there for you? Are they looking at it from a recruitment standpoint or from a community standpoint?
I mean, from what I've understand, a lot of us weren't recruited to join Crip. We just latched on to them and they just accepted us. So for that, it was like you're being groomed. So imagine Crip show you how to do this. They show you how to hide this. They show you how to move this. They show you how to throw the hands. They show you how to dress. You know, they're showing you all these things, even down to the mannerisms of how you carry yourself and how you talk. Because one thing that they always, some of the ones that I was exposed to, they told me if you want to last long in this business or last long on the street, you never want to draw unnecessary attention to yourself because they don't want just you, they want the whole family. So the way you protect this family is by not being flamboyant and out and open and drawing too much attention because you'll make it a lot harder for all of us to live. Because some of us, unbeknownst to me, they make a living a certain type of lifestyle. that brings a substantial amount of income. You know what I'm saying? So if they want to keep that going, a lot of the times we're being subconsciously groomed to protect them, by obeying the basic protocols of the street. So for that, it was never, they never came up to us saying, attack these guys across the street at all costs. They're the bad guys. They never came at us like that. We went from us watching them, we started realizing, okay, when a certain demographic of people come up over there in the territories, they attack and something sparks off and they respond by resisting them. So for us, we're learning what is resistance, we're learning what is war, we're learning what is the rules and what is the protocols. We didn't know that we were being recruited. Like it feels like, you say cuz, but they never told you why we say cuz. It just kind of stuck. Like somebody might be saying, somebody grew up saying bro, 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 bro. Everybody he's around keeps saying bro. So eventually that dude is going to grow up saying bro. And if his bros are anything like my cuz, you feel me? Then he's probably being groomed a certain way subconsciously without him knowing that a lot of this stuff is either in the eyes of the law criminal or communistic, you know what I'm saying, or that type of radical nature. But for the average person that's growing up and being indoctrinated in the culture, we don't really look at stuff like it's evil. The mid 70s and the 80s is when Crips became super violent. Because when Crips first started, it was all about fist fighting. The only people that wanted to shoot was the Bloods, you know? So when you introduce a gunplay from an opposing gang, that changes the demographic of the streets forever, you know? Now in the 90s, like in DC, in the summertime, like right now, all the heavy guns, all the big guns, like your ARs, your M16s, your AK-47s, that's all illegal. You know what I'm saying? So when you got big machine guns in the summertime, letting it off like automatics, all of that, is because it's hot outside. Now, in the wintertime, I noticed that's when all the smaller guns come out, like the Glocks, the nines, because it's easily to tuck. You can hide stuff. And that's because it's really cold outside and nobody wants to be in the cold with a big ass machine gun. But it's really crazy how that shit changes, man. It's like seasons. A lot of us, it's just a way of life, but for the Bloods are being recruited because the propaganda that they use is Crips is the bad guys, Crips are bullies, Crips will try to muscle in on you, resist the Crips. So when you look at the nature of what a Blood is, no disrespect to all my real solid ones from the other side, a lot of my damus that are my homies, they grew up with those, that programming. So for them, the nature of being a Blood is to essentially go against Crip. Whereas Crip, my nature was never intended to harm Bloods. My intention is to protect my community and service my community. Now, other people who are not Crips and Bloods, like these pimps, these players, these drug dealers, all of that is found within every gang, even non-gang. Because everybody wants to be the big man on campus. Everybody want to have their money. Everybody wants the big wallet, man. Who wants to be broke?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people won't admit this, but hip hop is the celebration of Italian mob culture. It is. Everybody wants to be the Don. Everybody wants to be the shooter. Everybody wants to roll with the suits. Everybody want to be a gangster. Everybody wants to be a part of the life. Everybody wants to be a made man. Like nobody wants to be regular no more.